All right, fact check this podcast. And tonight I am joined by some very good friends. We got Trey, Jonathan, and Josh, and we are going to be talking about a article from Paul Fahrenheidt predicting the realignment, and it's a first of a two-parter. I haven't read the second part yet. Jonathan has, so we'll let him cover that once we get to that point. But he's talking about the Republican and Democrat parties and kind of how things are shifting and how he sees them shifting going forward. So before we get too far into that, though, everybody introduce yourselves and tell people what you do and where they can find you, and then we'll jump at it.
Okay, I'll start. So Trey Daniel, I do some videos on Trey's Think Tank YouTube channel and Rumble channel, and occasionally I do gaming content on my Trey Daniel stuff, and I always post on Twitter, or X, whatever.
Clockwise, it's your turn, Josh.
My turn. Okay. I'm Jonathan Hemingway. I am a 21-year native of the state of Georgia. Originally a Midwestern guy, but a transplant to the South. And I'm a flower farmer and a basketball journalist, I guess you could say. I'm not really sure. I do lots of things that are that I really can't talk about online, but I'm here. I lurk on Twitter. Sometimes you can find me JL_Hemingway. Don't follow me. I don't really post anything significant, but I'm friends with these guys, and that makes me a good guy. Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah.
Jay Forte. I'm just an asshole on the internet. You can find me sometimes in the morning show with Justin. Was also born and raised in the greatest region in this country, the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Shenandoah Valley. So I'm kind of biased for the Southern Virginia kind of thing.
I guess I'm the only one who didn't say where I'm from. In that introduction part, I'm an Alabamian, so I'm here representing the good old state of Alabama. Roll Tide, Yellowhammer.
See, it's interesting because the article, and I'll pull it up and we'll kind of look at some of the stuff. But in the article, he mentions a few different states in particular: Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, and he also talks about Virginia. So we captured all of that with the guests tonight because not to dox him, but Jay also lives in Tennessee and is from Virginia area. So he's so we covered a lot of bases. And then I'm from Kentucky, lived in Mississippi and Arkansas for a number of years, and now, even though I'm technically a Yankee, this is probably, I actually see more Confederate flags here in this part of Indiana than I think I ever saw the entire time I lived in Mississippi. And Mississippi literally had a Confederate flag on their state flag at that time. So it's weird. This is still kind of Dixieland extended. And in fact, the people like from Indianapolis and Bloomington and like what I consider like middle and northern part of Indiana, they just refer to this as Kentucky North. Like they don't even consider Southern Indianans to actually be Indianans.
Well, it is the reddest Yankee state, isn't it?
Oh yeah, by a lot. Yeah. So, speaking of that, the article was interesting. Where do y'all want to start with the article itself? Because there's some talk about the Twisters movie. I thought the Twisters movie was fine. I'm not sure what Paul Fahrenheit's hate for the movie was. I mean, it was entertaining. If you're going to watch a movie called Twisters, are you really looking for something more depth or more depth than just like tornadoes destroying shit and a wild fun ride? So anyway, I didn't understand the hate for the movie, but
Flying cows.
If I could jump in maybe just real quick to Steelman, maybe his disdain for Twisters. I enjoyed the movie, by the way. But I think it's just the racial overtones, the quite obvious DEI inserts that they put, making, the smart, nerdy woman like the hero. But sort of the hero, I suppose, and kind of putting the good-looking white guy as the kind of the beta, so to speak, and then you have like these other racial minorities in the background, like.
But that kind of fits the trope of the original Twisters. Helen Hunt's character was the alpha in that. Bill Pullman was kind of the beta that gets roped along, and like he's the more fun one once he gets to be fun, but she's the lead role in that. So it fits the mold. As far as like the DEI casting, I noticed it, but also so I've talked about this with these guys on the morning show. Like, my only problem with DEI casting and putting all the like gay bullshit into every single movie and TV show and everything is the characters aren't good. The entire purpose of the character is to be the gay guy, to be the tranny, to be the black chick. These characters all, like, it didn't matter what their race or gender or any of that was. They were interesting characters, and they just happened to be all those things. So like I didn't mind it as much. I don't think they played up the black dude or the mixed chick. They didn't really play that up a whole lot, at least not that I noticed.
This is a great point, Justin, which is back during the 90s, which is the golden hour of our civilization, if you will.
Hey,
nobody really noticed
that
Morgan Freeman was a black guy because he was such a good actor, right? I mean, that's kind of the point that you're making, is that a lot of these actors are not good, and the only reason why they're in there is because of their racial status.
Checking boxes.
Yeah.
But so back to the movie. The main takeaway from the movie for Paul Fahrenheit is Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell is like the face of the movie, and for Paul Fahrenheit, Glenn Powell is going to be the face of liberalism sweeping the South. So let's. How do y'all want to take it from there? Because that's an interesting premise.
I will say that, like, in recent years, like, I used to do that podcast. I used to want to do like a movie thing because there were so many. Everybody wanted to do a podcast, anybody and their mom. So I wanted to do something different, do movies and TV. But like, the more I did it, the more I like realized I just went back to watching older stuff. Like, the only thing I know about this guy is from the Top Gun sequel. I haven't seen him in anything else personally, and he was okay. I don't think he's like very charismatic or anything, but he was fine in that.
But like just on its face, like just giving him the looks test, I guess this is not the future. The future is gonna be. I don't see it being Glenn Powell at all. I completely disagree with that thesis because he's much more clean cut than what I expect. I expect there to be a much more like J.D. Vance looking guy to kind of relate to like the poor Southern white man, and instead of something like this guy who
you
looks
think Glenn Powell is too like chiseled jawed, like good looking? You need somebody to dull it down a little bit that looks a little more like Josh or Jim.
Yeah, well probably more of a beard, probably a thicker beard. Like,
gotcha.
Well,
he'll look like Jim.
Point,
he'll look like a younger Jim. That's who's going to be the face of.
Really,
guy sounds dashing to me. I don't know what you guys are talking.
This right here, the face of Southern liberalism, right there.
Oh, fuck you! I'm late. I deserve it.
So the point that Paul's trying to make is that this idea of the clean cut, white guy, the cowboy, that we've made into the modern conservative. What he's saying is, if you look at, he connects this movie Twisters to what was it, the Paul Newman movie that
Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah, Cool Hand Luke. And what he's saying is, and then he even talks about Waylon Jennings and some of those country singers, that they were all progressives too. And so what what he's trying to paint here is that, and this is what Jason from 2-Bit is always talking about, is that the next iteration of the woke is going to be what's his term? You know, the trad.
Hick lib.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what
Neo-trad
Paul
is what
calls
he's
it.
calling
You know, the
it.
hick
Yeah.
lib. But what does Jason call it? The trad,
Neo-trad.
the neo-trads, right? Essentially, they're really identifying the same thing. And so what Paul's saying is that there's going to be a reinvention of Southern culture, and it's just going to be a skin suit, which may or may not connect to the past, but it's going to be wearing a cowboy hat, and it's probably going to be a little bit, the person in the cowboy hat might be a little bit browner than Waylon Jennings.
Yeah,
Well,
it's gonna.
or it'd be female, or it'll be female. Like,
There you go.
even in Alabama. So, like, speaking from experience with Alabama, we got our governor Meemaw, we call her. That's our affectionate name for her, because she's an old lady. And then around here, you love your Meemaw, and Meemaw is supposedly the best governor there ever was, because you gotta love Meemaw. You can't be mean to Meemaw. That's horrible. So. But she plays on the DI thing like a little bit. She's she has to do the fact of I'm a woman, and all this kind of stuff. Even with all the whole recent drama about the IVF and all this kind of stuff, she talks about as a woman kind of thing. She does the whole stick with that, but then she obviously leans on some of the sort of like conservative like talking points. But and that's sort of the synthesis of both of those sort of things connecting together, and that's sort of what it might look like. I would think.
Yeah, it's going to be
a lot of boomers.
It's going to be a lot less of what the Southern Baptists from the 1890s were, and more of a we're non-denominational, but we still have that same accent. So now this is the new representation of the South.
Egalitarianism ain't bad, right, y'all?
Actually, my neighborhood really picked up once we had all them coloreds move in.
Well, once we got all them Haitians in here,
really liven things up.
They worked real hard.
I didn't know you could spice things that way. Isn't that just a peach?
All right, so he talks about the laying of fiber optic cables and bringing technology to a world that has still been living in the 19th century, bringing 21st century technology to a world that's been stuck in the 19th century, and somehow getting a strange comment or a strange 20th century result out of it. I don't necessarily know that lacking technology has been a big thing in a lot of the South. I've moved a lot and lived in some, like, grain elevators don't usually pop up in real urban sprawl type locations. You're usually pretty rural for a lot of grain facilities. Even the one in New Jersey, like it was still outside of town, even though it was like there's Trenton, New Jersey, and then it's still like outside of town, as close to being country as you can get in New Jersey, or at least in that part of New Jersey. And once you get further south in New Jersey, it's like really country, but which is also a weird dynamic.
I mean, I know it's been a few decades, but like some of my family was pretty rural like that. Like I had family getting running water and electricity for the first time in the year 2000. But this was like rural ass West Virginia, like back in Hollers.
That's interesting because I lived all over, like I said, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, like the western side of Tennessee, down all through Louisiana, and everywhere I went had internet. You might have the janky satellite internet, or God forbid, even in some places they still had dial-up, but like literally everywhere had internet, even in like 2008, 2010, 2015. So like
I think that's what he's getting at, though, is that you're going from a dial-up, because this is what happened a lot of the time in the South, from basically since my childhood, is that we started progressing like there was a slow rate to begin with, because all the information was traveling. Like, we were getting the 10 years ago, the stuff was new to us or whatever. The jokes and sort of all the different things that we were discussing, like pop culture references.
Yeah,
we were getting those like 10 years late, almost.
That's how it was for us too.
But then once it started picking up, once you get broadband out there, and now, there are a lot of places that I know that were just getting that crappy satellite internet or whatever, that are actually getting some of that fiber optic cable run, and some of those places are now fully onboarded onto the internet. So in some ways I can understand what he's trying to say, but I don't know necessarily that, just like with a lot of people saying that the internet has had such an impact on like just social media, has impacted a lot of people's behaviors. I don't really necessarily believe that. I think it's just showing you're getting to see people for what they are more often.
Amplified.
Yeah, you're just turning the dial up. It's not like, funnily enough, no pun intended, but that, like, you're just kind of edging up the personality more than it already was. It's not changing who that person was necessarily.
Well, I might disagree slightly, Trey. I understand your point. I think where Paul is going with this is that fundamentally technology does change the human being. It changes, or at least in many of these areas where you do have broadband or fiber internet, the types of people that are moving in or attracted to moving into these areas are going to be fundamentally different. So I'll give you an example. Where I live right now is literally on the edge of the sprawl in Atlanta. And I live right on the border of one county, which is maybe the first or the biggest or the second biggest county in the state. And the county that I'm actually residing in is well on its way to being completely suburbanized. And on one side of the county line, you've got all of the commercial businesses, the Home Depot, the Lowe's, everything. On the other side of the line, you can go down to a feed store and buy raw milk. Okay. And like that networking ability, I really see it as kind of a synthetic weave, even though, we can get internet here. That's not really the point. But what will happen with the sprawl is this networking effect of, who's moving in here. When you pop up a subdivision, it's going to be people that are migrants one way or another. I mean, they could be moving in from Michigan, or they could be moving in from Oklahoma, or they could be moving in from South America for that matter. They're not going to be, Southerners. So I think what he's getting at is that this sprawl of technology is it's going to fundamentally change who lives in the South.
There's a solution to that problem. Interesting. Joshua Ham is over here in the comments, and we're in a couple Indiana group chats together. Somebody had shared in one of the Indiana group chats a couple months ago, some chick talking about like going out with her real estate agent to look at property out in like rural parts of Indiana. They're trying to get away from the city and get out of town and find like better parts of the country, or better parts of the countryside to live in. And everywhere they went, there were Confederate flags and Trump flags just everywhere. And she was like, "Nope, I'm just staying in the city. I don't want that. These are not my people." There are ways to dissuade them from trying to come and invade your space. You just have to the kids asked me why I have I have a sign, like a yard sign that says "Save the USA, vote pro-life." And the kids were like, "Why do you have that out in the yard?" And I'm like, this is a kind of like a marker type of a thing. I believe it, yes, but the sign itself is more of a deterrent to people that I don't want coming. It's more of a deterrent to people I don't want coming around the house.
It's soft neighborhood management.
And it reminds me of Talladega Nights with the jukebox. It's like, why do you have that on there? He's like, so we could tell who the queers are. It's like, we also have the Pet Shop Boys.
Well, that's like with the flag. Since I brought it home, we have a flagpole out here, and I don't use it. I'm considering like every morning going out and raising the flag, and then before I leave for work in the evening, bringing it back in. Like run this flag up every day. Like I want to really make sure that like people that I don't want come because there have been people moving in out here, and so far we've been lucky, and they've all been people that when they were younger, like they were from here, and when they were younger they moved to Indy or somewhere else because that's where work was, and then they did really well for themselves, made a ton of money, and realized that Indy's a fucking liberal hellhole and had to escape. And so they brought their money and they came back, and like they built a house. They're like getting away from that shit and getting back to their roots. So far we've been lucky, it's been good folks like that we actually want around here. Eventually it's not going to be. And I want to do everything I can to have them have the same experience as that chick talking about going out with a real estate agent. Like I want them to come out. We got a neighbor down the road that has a Confederate flag, a Trump flag, an American flag, and a South Carolina flag. I don't even know why there's a South Carolina flag, but there's a South Carolina flag. Like they got a big ass tree in their front yard, and they got all these flags hanging from the tree. Like more people like that will deter anybody that we don't want around here from moving out here.
Well, the palmetto is a beautiful tree.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe they thought they were getting because it does kind of have they have a similar coloration, but the Indiana flag has the torch with the little stars around it, and the South Carolina flag is a similar background color, but it's the tree with a star. So maybe they just got confused. I mean, I'm not saying that the people out here are particularly intelligent. I'm just saying they're my people.
Should fly
See,
my
around
Virginia
here,
flag, my based one, the 6 Semper Tyrannis.
Yes, you should.
See, I can just fly the Alabama flag, and it's a couple colors away from being the rebel flag.
I mean, they're both St. Andrew's Cross.
I've been trying to find a classic Mississippi flag before they changed to that gay bullshit they got now.
Well, and I might be historically illiterate with what I'm about to say, but that's fine. I'll go out on that limb solo. But the old Georgia state flag, which I thought was perfectly fine, had the stars and bars on one side, and then the state seal on the left side, and then they changed it to some god awful bullshit that you would find in a middle school history book with a diagram of all the other flags at the bottom of the flag. It was a diagram of flags, was our flag for a few years. And then they switched over to something that actually was a lot closer to what represented, old flags, if I can say. I don't know if it was, I don't know. And I think that it was based on the further historically illiterate that didn't even pick up on it. They're just like, well, thank God at least that racist symbol is off that thing. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, well, we do have internet here. Broadband's all over Atlanta. You can go look up the actual Confederate battle flags and you might see some similarities, but stay ignorant. That's fine.
Well, the stars and bars was originally the battle flag of the Northern Virginia Army, if I recall.
Yeah. But it then kind of became like just a moniker of an umbrella representative.
Yeah.
So all of this part of the conversation ties into something that Paul talks about in his piece here. Like he talks about how all of the like traditions, the statues and everything has been like stripped away from the South, and how it's kind of changed the dynamic. Like there's not the extent and the degree of like the Southern heritage that you think of, and that's kind of like is traditionally a part of Southern culture and stuff. And I see that, like I get what he's saying, but also I feel like, so where what he's saying with this is, I'm trying to find the exact line, because he talks about how it was the governments that did all this stuff.
These governments had largely been taken over from dying boomers by the only people who cared enough to do it. Hicklibs, is that the one?
The only people who cared enough to do it, because the more traditional conservative type Southerners were busy with everything else. They were working.
Well, and they were browbeaten out of public life. Like this is the, you know, when you know, a lot of the, especially Southern Baptists, like the sort of ethos of in the unfortunate kind of thing that the Southern Baptists have kind of propagated to, that they basically said, you know, you don't need to pursue public office because that's, you know, sinful, and that you're gonna be, basically you're gonna become corrupted because it's a corrupt system, so you're gonna become corrupted, and you know that's kind of what they sort of, a lot of them sort of preach at you.
And I've heard that exact line. It's a corrupt system. If you get involved with it, you'll become corrupted. So the interesting thing, I think, from that is he talks about how like all of this stuff has been done by the Hicklib, by the only ones who were willing to actually step up and do it. But
I don't know. Nikki Haley's a Hicklib because she led the charge on the Southern, the flag in South Carolina.
Nikki Haley's a
neocon. I know.
Never mind, she's something else.
Can you be an actual Hicklib if you're Indian?
Right, that's what I was gonna say. I was like,
no. Let me describe to you what a Hicklib is, okay? And I know Hicklibs, okay? So I know a woman who was born to a traditional Southern family, and her father probably used unsavory language and, called colored people, ugly names. And she went off to college, and she got smart, okay? And she got educated, and she gets married, and she names her child, after the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, or, something like that. Right. And now she flies the rainbow flag in her front yard. Okay. She's a Southerner. Okay. You get it? Like she probably has generations going back, but she gets uploaded into this system. And now she's a part of the managerial state, and she has uploaded every bit of that progressive mentality into her brain, into her mentality. So the point here is that, I think Paul's talking about a certain degree of immigration and browning of the South, but also like the descendants of actual Southerners now, as they become educated, as they get online, like they are adopting the regime's mentality. So I think that's kind of where he's going with this. I don't know what you guys' thoughts on that is.
I mean, it's basically, it's Southern defectors to the managerial regime is effectively what they are.
Scalawags.
Yeah.
Rapscallions.
That
one has a particular meaning.
But with that,
Scallywag.
they're still the ones who stepped up when nobody else would. I think there is another side of that Josh is part of our Indiana group. So like with Brandon Harnish here in Wells County, which is not part of Southern Indiana. They are not the good, Confederate siding part of Indiana. They're like legitimately fucking Yankees. But what you're seeing, and Brandon is like, what he's doing is what I think you're going to start seeing more in the South, where you had the people that didn't get involved because the system is corrupt, and the system will corrupt you if you get into it. And, it's best to leave that to the snakes and the snake oil salesmen and everything else. And don't like, you'll be fine. Don't bother yourself with that until we start to realize we're not going to be fine, because if we don't actually step up and start putting ourselves into those positions, then it's just going to be the fucking shit libs who do it forever. It's going to be the hick libs. It's going to be these low intelligence, low contribution pieces of shit who don't do anything for society other than put themselves into a public office and then fuck things up because they're too dumb to understand how fucked up it is. We need.
Well, they're following marching orders.
So then people like us start to see that. Trey, I know you've considered a run for office. I've also considered, and if we hadn't moved, I would have run that year, but we moved, and so that like messed with my plans. Like, people like us are starting to consider, like, if we don't do something, then it's never going to get fixed, because the people who are running, they're all the same. They're all fucking useless. So it's up to us. I think that's going to be the thing that prevents some of what Paul has talked about, is, or at least starts to, if not belays it, at least at the very least, or if not completely stops it, at the very least will like delay it and keep it from happening with the next, couple of election cycles. Is people like us are starting to get fed up with the people who don't actually have our values being the ones who are in power.
Another optimistic thing is like the other side of having all this technology and the internet is like these younger people are like seeing how like they've been lied to. So they're seeking out other information and they're learning about their history and culture, out of just being a pure contrarian.
I was going to say, the next part is like the youth, the actual youth, especially young males. My son and all of his little dumbass friends, they see through all the bullshit. Like, you can't propagandize them. They have seen.
They've
so
grown
much,
up with video games,
right? They've grown up with all
of
of this stuff. They've seen so much of it that they now identify the bullshit from what's real. And oddly and interestingly, and even to some extent terrifyingly enough, they're really attracted to the stuff that's real, and they really, really reject the stuff that's bullshit. And there have been 3 separate instances of the school that my son goes to having either trannies or furries, and like him and all of his little friend group just bully them until they either quit school or move. Like they are rejecting this bullshit. They not just have they been brought up with it, but it's been so pushed on them that now they're pushing back.
What
like,
if
that gives me some hope?
Maybe the furries, maybe the Haitians are an answer to that problem.
I mean, they are into cannibalism, so.
Ah, damn it! All right, 30,000 more Haitians. Bring them in. I mean, I hear they're coming here for work. I got a job for them.
Can we supply the charcoal?
Oh, there's gonna be a lot of coal burning.
Look, barbecue supplies his own charcoal. Thank you.
There's another part of the analysis here that I think that Paul maybe left out, which I think you're hitting upon, Justin, which is he did not really talk about the generational. Well, he did. He kind of alluded to previous generations, but I'm a Gen Xer, okay, and we know that the boomers are completely paused, and my generation is just a bunch of progs. I'll be honest, and the millennials seem to be not too much better, but will it? And yes, okay. So there needs to be good men that take positions of power. But really the question is if you ascribe to some level of elite theory, who are the impressive men? Who is the aristocracy of our generations? And I'll be honest, like my generation, the impressive people have just embedded themselves into either corporate America or, the managerial state. Mm-hmm. Will the next generation, will Gen Z, Gen Alpha, will they become more entrepreneurial and, become impressive in and of themselves? And I think that's where the split may, but by then I think this is Paul's point, is that by that time it's going to be too late. The South will have completely returned blue.
I think though that it's not necessarily like in the South as far as that goes, but I do think that there are some markers, at least in the millennial generation, of people who are more entrepreneurial, but they do kind of defect towards regime propaganda and stuff like that. So with people like and somebody that I'm very critical of, like Mr. Beast, like he's very entrepreneurial, like he's super entrepreneurial, even to like even further degree. But then and then like Logan Paul and people like this. So there's very much an entrepreneurial spirit, but they all kind of bury it into, I'm going to defect into the regime. But I do agree with what you're saying. There's a lot of the sort of generational cohorts that are sort of warring over the same territory here, and it's not going to change really. I don't think until more of the boomer generation kind of moves on. And then we kind of get to see where I think that's when we're going to see where the ground is of this whole situation.
It's also going to be interesting when they start dying off, because like, aren't they like an oddity? They're like, I don't know what the number is, 3 or 4 or 5 times like greater, like overall, like how, like by percentage, like their generation is to like compared to other generations. Did that make any sense? Like there's a lot more of them than there are like, the greatest generation, or, millennials and Zoomers after that. They were just a giant, like it was like this oddity where like so many babies were born in that time period.
Well, and that's the largest argument for pro-immigration, is that we are not, and you hear it now amongst a lot of right-wing circles, that we are not having enough children. We are below replacement population as far as repopulating, our area. Therefore, we must import the next generation to take care of our old ass. And I couldn't think of a larger nightmare, which already exists in a lot of places. There's plenty of videos, stories, and everything that's obvious to most people, but surprising to even more people. And that is to have people that don't share your culture, values, language, customs, anything, traditions.
Taking care of your elderly. Yeah.
Being responsible for your well-being when you're incapable of it. That sounds like a hellscape that is inevitable if something doesn't change, but I think cheered on by those who don't understand what they're cheering on.
Yeah.
So an interesting dynamic of this is the conversation about the millennials and the generational differences. Like we've talked about, like the Zoomers that are coming up, at least in the males of that generation, much less so in the females, it seems. But at least in the males of that generation, you see a lot of pushing back against this bullshit that they've been force-fed for their entire lives. Like for all of us, to some extent or another, we had somewhat of a normal childhood up until some point, and then wokeness became a thing and everything went fucking crazy. Like, my kids have been raised in all of this is fucking crazy. And like maybe we were the frog in the pot, and they didn't have the slow boil to get there. They are maturing and seeing and going, holy fucking shit, what is going on? Like they're
using that analogy, you're dropping them in the already hot pot, and so they're going to jump out like that if you are boiling a frog, obviously the slow boil is how you
right. We all got kind of slow boiled, and so there are large swaths of our generation that just kind of accepted it. But I think that's also a rural, urban, and suburban gap. Like, I can't think of a single person that I grew up with or went to college with or have like spent time with that's in my age group, in all the places I've lived, Arkansas, Mississippi, all over the place, Louisiana, that is even a little bit progressive or liberal in any way. Like, the more rural you are, the more you kind of didn't get indoctrinated into that bullshit.
The more you see reality for what it is.
Right. I mean,
is-
when you have to actually work, like when you start working on the farm when you're 9 years old and you work all the time, even for my friends who weren't part of farm families, they were working at 12. Like as soon as
They had a frame of reference at least. Like I don't
Right.
know how many of these city people that I work with down here. Like I'll tell them stories about how I grew up, and they'll just think I'm like a fucking alien from another planet.
Yeah, they're like, "There's no way that can be right." I'm like, "What do you mean? This is like this." I don't even have the most interesting childhood stories. Like I got friends that
Yeah, to them it's like, wow, that's crazy. I'm like, that was a Tuesday.
yeah.
Is it I got a question. I'm gonna play the role of the ignorant observer, something that comes naturally to me. Is it a correct assessment that the more rural you are, the less politics are actually discussed, and you already understand where the person lies on that spectrum based on just your commonalities because you're both kind of in a similar situation? Because what I see is that, like, not that people are waiting for a MARTA bus talking about, who they're going to vote for. Then again, I wouldn't know what the fuck they're talking about because I never cast a shadow in those places. But just in the city, everybody kind of just avoids each other. Does not interact. All the interaction is online. And then once you see the voting results, that kind of reveals itself.
Unless
But
it's a big event. That's the only time if you ever go into a city for a big event. That's the only time that
so like for an example, I live in similar to where Jonathan is, outside of Atlanta, but very much in the urban sprawl, like very much. And me and my buddies went and saw Shane Gillis, comedian, at an arena 10 minutes down the road. And show was great, all that fun shit. But then when we're coming back to our car, we parked in a parking garage on site, and we're in the elevator going to our level. There was a lady who was clearly, I could just tell from a mile away, a Trump fan, which is fine. She had like a USA hat that was all bedazzled and like a American flag shirt. And so I was like, well, I can take a quick guess. And while we were in the elevator, she took that time to turn around and stump speech for Trump to us. And I didn't have the heart to tell her, lady, you can save your breath. Like, we're good. But she felt the need to bring up politics as though she was like trying to save us from something, because the inclination is that we're so close to a city that all y'all must be some liberal faggots. And I'm like,
Well,
You
Also,
should
that's-
have just been like, "Let me stop you right there." Hell yeah, sister, and gave her a high five. Like,
well, I
like-
think that's more of like a modern thing where everything has become about politics now. I think
Yeah, but-
that's more of that.
so like my parents live super rural, like a level of rural that doesn't even exist in the state of Georgia anymore. Sadly, politics never comes up there. Then again, it's the highest majority white state in the nation, and everybody's very similar.
every time I go home to the farm, my brother and I will go to the local bar. Nobody talks about politics at the bar. This last time we were home, because the UK game was on, hell of a fucking game. Really.
Sorry, real quick, Josh. I couldn't. The elevator was too crowded.
So hell of a game, Jim. But the UK game was on, so there were a lot more people at the bar than what there usually are there. And so, like, really weird. I had a handful of people that like walked up to me and told me that they listened to the show, watched the show, and like enjoyed the stuff that I put out, which is super strange because nobody ever tells me that. So thank you.
I'll never tell you that.
Yeah, I know. You'll definitely never tell me. My wife won't even. My wife won't even acknowledge that I do this. She's like, I was like, "You want to come sit with us and like listen as we talk about this stuff?" And she's like, "No, I really don't." I was like, "Okay, well, fine then, I guess."
She's wising up.
Yeah, but anyway, like outside of that, there was no political conversation going on. Everybody's talking about the crops that are getting ready to come off. Everybody's talking about the football game. Everybody's talking about what UK's basketball team is going to be like this year. Like everything but politics. It doesn't come up ever. And that's I've gone home more this year than I probably have in the last 5 years, and every time I go home, we either go to a party or out in the field somewhere with a bunch of our old friends. Somebody's having a birthday or whatever, or go to the bar or something else. Like, we go and hang out, and I don't think anybody ever has talked about politics at all in all of the visits that I've made over this past year. And like, it doesn't come up, period. So,
well, this is just a clear argument as to the more the technological society envelops people, the more politicized it becomes. Jacques Ellul's book Propaganda says that the main purpose, the only purpose for mass media is to propagandize and politicize the people's minds. And it is, to one degree or another, to divide them, but really the division isn't as much as important as it is to propel people to action. So in a way, you do want two sides, because it serves as kind of a cylinder as such, like it's just a perpetual motion machine. And what you're describing, in these rural areas, is that there's no other motion to, there's no action to create the reaction. So yeah, everybody kind of thinks the same. Now, if I may just for one moment, so I did not grow up in a town. The nearest town to me was 400 people. I had to drive 20 minutes to get to the nearest stoplight where I grew up in East Central Illinois. Okay. And the very first time I drove, I think I was 8 years old. My dad put me in a pickup truck, which was a stick shift, by the way. And he said, hey, just push in on the clutch and just let it out real slow, and then just slowly press in on the gas, and just follow behind me when I'm driving this tractor. And I drove, like 4 or 5 miles. I was 8 years old. Okay. That's unthinkable of me doing with my children today. That's how rural that I grew up. Now, I will say, I was introduced to politics because I drove a tractor as a teenager, okay, very young, and I would listen to AM radio, and I would listen to Rush Limbaugh. And so for some reason, like I was like maybe slightly above intelligence, so I would listen to Rush, and then I would go and like pick arguments with my teachers at school, who were very clearly Democrats. And I would say things like, well, of course you're a Democrat. Your salary is based upon people's taxes, so you want to raise taxes, right? And anyhow, this is how like technology, kind of seeds these ideas for division as such. So, as long as I don't really know a way out of this necessarily, because we're going to be constantly stuck in this technological loop. And I think what Paul's saying here is that the next generation of hicklibs is really just like this, our generation of conservatives. It's the conservative driving the speed limit, and he's just, pointing a spotlight forward on what's about to happen. So that's kind of black pillish. I'm sorry.
Well, it has been, but on the other side of that, it has been encouraging, because like you talk about Paul Harvey, he talks about Glenn Powell, like the things that you're exposed to will kind of craft the things that you think about and the way that you react to what's going on in the world. What we're seeing happening kind of across the spectrum in the entertainment industry, especially with movies and TV shows, is there has been a significant rejection of woke propagandized bullshit, especially in stuff that's more male centric, I guess, like the comic book movie stuff, the Star Wars stuff, action movies, stuff like that. Like, the more you see the DEI stuff and the woke messaging stuff getting crammed into those things, the more you're seeing not just pushback, but like straight up outright rejection of it. And then when it gets rejected, the Leviathan comes in and they're like, oh, well, you're just racist, you're just sexist, you're just whatever, you're just a bigot. And then the response is, yeah, well, fuck you. We're bigots. Make something that's good. Stop cramming all this bullshit down our throat. We don't want it. And so like,
didn't that the Charlie's Angels remake was like a great example of it, because when that was coming out, all the press was, this movie isn't for you white straight men. And
Well, the
like,
Terminator remake.
later on, it was like, our movie's not making money because white straight men aren't going to watch it.
like you're making a Charlie's Angels movie. Your target demographic is white straight men that want to see Charlie's Angels being fucking hot and doing action movie type shit. If you don't give them that, then like who are you selling this to?
But this is my point. Isn't like the original Charlie's Angel like just last generation's version of woke?
In a way, yeah. Well, at least we got to objectify women.
That what he said. Right. That's the great thing about the other generations versions of woke is, he talks about Waylon Jennings and he talks about Cool Hand Luke and all of that stuff, and like that was the liberalizing of men and stuff like that.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be contrarian and like, but it's just in my nature.
But all that stuff was also awesome in its own way, because like for us, we can look back at it and be like, yeah, that was fucking badass. Like we can look past, our generation can look past the liberal messaging and see like objectifying women and
But aren't we just doing the James Lindsay of like, hey, let's just rewind the tape, 30 years and it'll all be good. I mean, if we can do that, but isn't the tape just going to run out? Like this is kind of the thing.
Well, yeah. That's why we got to train and raise up the next generation. So when the tape does run out 30 years from now, then it's my son's responsibility to wind that fucker back up and get it going again.
I see what John's saying though, like the rose-colored glasses of when we were growing up. Like we didn't realize how things were bad at the time, but it was like more low key. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, everybody harkens back to a better day, because things are always better when you're less aware of things. Ignorance is bliss. That's a statement for a reason. That's a saying for a reason.
Well, hindsight's 2020.
But I think that's going to change going forward, because my son is not going to look back at 2020, 2021, 2022 and think fondly of the better days of his early years of high school. Like
they don't have the nostalgia.
Right. I remember my freshman, sophomore, junior, senior years of high school, and like it was fucking awesome. And I'm sure there was a whole lot of dumb, crazy shit that was going on in the world that I had no idea about. And it was actually pretty terrible, especially in a lot of ways. He's not going to have those like fond memories. He's going to remember COVID and all of the bullshit that followed. Like, so they're not going to have the rose-colored glasses. They're going to see their past in a different light, and they're going to want to shape their future based on, we're not going back to what was good because it wasn't good. It was fucked up. Now we've got to fix it and make something better.
Oh shit, Justin. We're not going back. We're not going back.
Giving my Kamala Harris campaign speech here.
Yeah, you got a box of line at your feet. Otherwise, it's not a full Kamala.
Look, I was raised in a middle class family.
I was raised a poor black child. No,
whose daddy
part
left me.
My mama worked hard to support me and my sister.
My part of the way I see things is maybe slightly different. Only in that, like, I understand there's a time to take things seriously and understand that the enemy's at the gates and all that stuff. I'm down with all that, and it's like, while I have guns in my gun closet, I would still rather mock them to their face, like, until those need to come out. Until we're to that point, we're not to that point. Mock them to their fucking face.
That's what I've always said. Your sense of humor is the last thing they can take from you.
Yeah,
and
Jen subscribes to the meme them until they cry and then meme them until they commit self-harm. Like,
yeah, like, and here's the thing: when I was in high school in the 90s, memes didn't exist. We still dealt with shit by just mockery. Bullying was a thing and it was effective. And, just laughing in the face of people that were just full of all the worst ideas. Just laugh them off. Tell them to fuck off. Like, I don't know. I remember a time before everything felt like everything was the most important thing at all times in every situation because everything's, if it's not now, it's never. And it's like,
But to the point,
I hear
Jim,
you.
like,
I hear you, and I don't disagree with forecasting how bad things could be at some point. But if I just look back over my parents' lifetime, I mean, things aren't great. Things could always be better. But I look back and it's like the 60s were wildly fucked up, man.
Mm-hmm.
The 70s, wildly fucked up. 80s, insane. 90s, everybody looks back at the 90s like that was the shit. But it was also because things it was just good enough to where people weren't paying attention.
Nihilism too.
Like I said, ignorance is bliss. We were ignorant as fuck in the 90s. So it's like almost like what we're striving for is to become ignorant again. So that like all this bullshit like tones down so that it's not up here. It's like, hey, let's just get back to like, I'm just asking for small victories. I just want to call people fags, man.
You are the aspiring midwit. I mean,
you're at an 8, you need to be at a 2.
Whatever.
You are the aspiring midwit. Getting back to being ignorant seems like
no. I'm just pointing out that seems to be like the underlying thing is like all of this, and I'm just speaking with no plan of like a point at the end, which is my normal thing. But it seems like a lot of this is half of it is realizing the actual threat, and then a lot of it is just complaining that things are different and like things aren't great. And we want it to go back to like, remember when we weren't thinking about this shit? That was awesome. And it's almost like, okay, so in one hand, you're saying it's going to take work to like correct all this shit. But the end goal is so that we don't have to do the work to like fix it, so that the problems are fixed so that we can go back to just kind of being on way.
And see, I guess I wear the rose-colored glasses going in the other direction because of my kids, because of like my son and all of his friends that I talk about, because we saw the stuff with the frat bros with the counter protesting stuff on college campuses. And I don't give a fuck if Israel was funding them or sending them checks afterwards or what the fuck ever. Like, they are out there pushing back against the leftist rage mob. Like, and it's not just on that. You see that coming from young men in that age group consistently on a lot of different stuff. And yes, there are a lot of the, progressive ones in big cities that are just straight up fucking fags. But you get a lot of these like frat bro types that like the frat bro type is starting to make a little bit of a resurgence. You get the kids like my son and all of his friends. I had basketball players a few years ago that they're all pretty well awesome. Like, I still keep up with a lot of them. They're good kids. They're a lot like my son. My daughter, I will go into her class, and whenever they talk about some propaganda bullshit, because she spends as much time with me as she does, she'll just be like, no, that's not right. And just start like racking off actual facts and statistics and stuff. And then, I get emails and whatever. And that's cool. I'm like,
that's pretty fucking terrifying that there's going to be a female like you that can hide behind the woman card.
Right? That's why she's the scary one. Like, because she's just the female version. And like, she's going to be She's going to be trouble.
She can fit the DEI, and then she can also be base.
Right. So I look forward with the rose-colored glasses because I see this next generation coming up as they're going to push back against this shit, and I think the generation that's going out, or maybe in Fahrenheit's case, like our generation, are the ones who are coming in to be the the hick libs and move left, or at least not push back against it. Our generation's a bunch of fucking pussies. I wrote a piece for Substack, about the strong men. Strong men create good times create weak men create bad times. Like, we're the weak men. It's our generation. We're the weak men. Like, we're not the ones who are going. We're not the strong men who are being made by the bad times. We're the weak men who created the bad times. We're
That
still
hurts,
in the
but I
process.
agree.
We are still in the process of creating the bad times. The strong men that are going to come out of this is the next generation, and they're going to fuck us up. Not us five in particular. We'll be fine because we align with them. But the rest of our generation who fucking suck, the next generation coming up, after they get done fucking up all of the pussies in their own generation, next they're coming for us. So, like, I have optimism for the future because I see, like, these giant dumbasses like my son and all of his friends that I'm like, we're going to be all right. Like, the world is healing. But it's because they've radicalized it so much that they don't have a choice. Like, they've pushed them into this corner, and now, like, once you push a caged animal into a corner so far, like, now it has no choice but to fight back. And that's how I feel like these boys are. Like, they're fighting back because they don't have any other option.
A wise philosopher who was also a cooler once said, "Nobody puts baby in a corner."
That is true. And then he wrote a massive, awesome wave.
That was sick.
I'm kind of doing a blend there. But no, my prior point might have come off a little mis-targeted because I was thinking about what I was actually trying to say.
You're just using birdshot.
Yeah, man, put a slug in birdshot, man. Just knock them down and then spray them.
Nice spread.
But it's more of like a lot of people fear what's in the future because if things continue on this path, then it's like totally black pilling. Mm-hmm. I look at it more like if we had the things that we have today, as far as technology, going back to technology and what that ends up doing and corrupting and whatnot, I see technology as a tool. It's all about, like, are you smart enough to learn how to manipulate it to your benefit? Mm-hmm. But if technology that we have today, what we're using now, existed in 1992 or 1982, would they be talking about the same issues, the same problems? Because it's not like all of a sudden things just now got fucked up. Like I said earlier, things have been fucked up for the last 70 years, last 100 years. What would come out of that if it was our parents' generation, or even, Gen X or our parents' generation or even the greatest generation that had this technology? What would they do with it to create the society that they would prefer? And would it be different than the one we're living in? AKA, is there something we can be doing with this differently to get us to a place that's better than the thing that we black pillars might see as inevitable and it's already too late?
That's an interesting idea. Like, I like to think my dad would have done something with it because, grew up really rural, had to drop out of school to go to work, ended up becoming self-employed, running his own construction company. Like, that mind with this technology in his youth, I think would be terrifying in a good way. Like, he could have done a lot with it.
I'll just echo what you have been saying, Justin, about the younger generation. We had our first OGC Atlanta chapter meetup last week, and we missed you, Jim. Sorry you couldn't make it. But I was the oldest guy at the table, and how old am I? 47.
Just old enough to where it's a question.
Yeah, that's right. After 45, you have to start doing math. And yeah, so like I was older, like 7 years older than the next guy. And I'm like, oh man, like I'm actually old now. And there was a guy who was 30 years old. I mean, these guys are young and they're looking around and they're like, things aren't right. We've got to set things in order. A book that I started, I say reading, I've been listening to it on audiobook. I downloaded the PDF. I'll probably reread it as well. I would encourage anybody listening to read it as well. Ideas Have Consequences by Richard Weaver. very good, a Southerner, and he was born in 1910. I think he died in 1963. So he had a really unique perspective of the curve of what set us here. But one particular chapter that I got to, he starts talking about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a gentleman specifically. And he talks about how any man that is a specialist is really useless. And if you think about the managerial state and, these people that go to university and they get these degrees and they can only do like one specific thing. And I think to just echo you guys' sentiment of positivity here, I think the opportunity for men to become like well-rounded gentlemen, that can speak in public, that can be strong and can be leaders, but also know how to farm a little bit, can put together a building, and at the same time raise children. Like those that's like the future elite, just waiting in the wings. So I am very much of the opinion that don't get specialized. Dabble in a lot of different things and try to synthesize, try to become as good at as many things as possible, especially in the arts. I think that, science and technology, I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but, Peter Thiel has talked about how, the days of math and technology, like that's coming to an end because everybody's going to have access to all that technology. Now it's going to be who can philosophize, who can, really excel in conveying ideas and moving people. That's what's interesting to me.
What you're saying about the well-rounded gentleman, like that, you're describing like every positive male mentor and role model I had growing up.
Yep.
Right.
That was what you would have like strived to,
Right. As my granddad, my dad, like me and my brother, like you can plant a garden, you can work on your truck, you can build a house or a barn or whatever from just lumber. Being able to do a little bit of all that stuff. I am trying to browbeat it into my dumbass. He's rejected a lot of it, but I still keep trying. The thing that has helped with some of that is now he has his own truck. And so since he has his own truck, now like all the shit that I've been trying,
I bet his interest level just went up.
Right. All this shit that I've been trying for years to get him to like, hey, come help me change my oil. Hey, come help me change my brakes. Hey, come help me do this and this and this. Oh yeah. And then he never shows up. Now he's got his own truck and he's like, all right, so it needs an oil change now, right? Like, can we go get the stuff? When are we going to change the oil? I'm like, you can pump the brakes a little bit. We don't have to change it like the second that it rolls over 3,000 miles. Like just, but
3,000.
Yeah.
I use synthetic. I can go longer.
Right. Like you can calm down a little bit, but yeah, like that's, now he's starting to want to do some of those things. And so that's
pretty cool.
A well-rounded gentleman not only can change his oil, but when there's a disagreement in church and people are, not getting along with one another, that gentleman is able to come in and be able to hear both sides and get people to come to a synthesis. I think that we don't need to think about ourselves as, just individual, frontiersmen, but we're going to have to work in communities as well. And I know that we're all in agreement with that, but that's part of, laying down the fabric of these communities that we need to start aiming towards.
Yeah, the real art is being and this is going to sound as faggy as it's about to sound, but it is what it is. There's a real art to being the peacemaker.
Yeah,
it's a lot less difficult to be the guy rallying the troops. Enemy over there, let's go get them. Hell yeah, brother, fuck those guys. That's where it kind of feels like we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine, but at some point there has to be somebody with it in the back of their mind that has like Matt Erickson says this a lot. The OGC guys say this a lot. These are our people. regardless of how they voted and how their situation got to this point. Like those are our people, and we need to go rescue them. That is the peacemaker mindset. But we can just stay at a heightened level of looking at reasons why we should go after this thing, but target identification, friend enemy distinction, all of that is the end result that's implied in that doesn't get talked about enough is a peacemaker mindset.
It's a great point.
You are looking for a resolution to an outcome that is the one that you strive for. And I think that kind of gets lost a little bit, but I'm not smart enough to really hone that in enough to elaborate any more than at some point, if we get the future that we desire, there needs to be some recognition of that. And that comes in the form of what is the point of fighting if it's not for peace?
Yeah, the libs are really great at universalizing everything. So everybody is a potential friend for them if they can, just put them into the patronage system. Whereas all of us on the right, we're really good at finding the differences between one another. So everybody is a potential enemy. Maybe we've got a little bit to learn from the other side, because we are stuck in the particulars of truth, if you would. And we've this is such a good point, Jim, which is if we can find that friend enemy, just like the friend circle ought to be pretty big. And then once we get everybody in that circle, then we just work to harmonize and keep everybody in that circle, so to speak.
Well, and I think the biggest thing is like people make peace with enemies all the time. It's just who's going to be the one dictating the terms. I think that's where the argument is, not just destruction of my enemy. It's how can we come to terms? And you need to be the one setting the terms. That is the argument that I think kind of gets leapt over, because a lot of people are in the back of their head like, yeah, fuck them. We got to annihilate them, which more power to you, run that as far as you can. This is not a non-legal binding statement. I'm just
cycle of revenge,
but that's exactly. You're going to end up becoming a fucking mud hut rock chucker real quick if peace is not taking up some area on the page of your declaration of what you're going after.
All right, now I have the playbook for what I need. Now I have the playbook for what I need to be teaching my son and his other angry Zoomer friends. Is it can't just be about going out and destroying all of the progressive woke bullshit that you've been inundated with your entire life. You also have to move once it's destroyed. Now you stop and you create peace. You don't have to go in. You don't have to be eternally destructive.
Be a paragon.
It's like, yes, you go pants that faggot over there and you give him a swirly, but if he has a flat tire on the side of the road, you go show him how to change that fucking tire, because that's
and then maybe he won't be gay.
You never know what impact you have. That's all I'm saying.
The only thing he'll be blowing up is his tire.
So, do we think Paul Fahrenheit's right? Is the Democratic Party going to rise again in the South, or is the next generation going to snuff that shit out?
I think that's been dead. That's been a dead thesis for a long time, because that's what they keep kind of coming back to, and it hasn't borne any truth. Alabama's been red for God knows. I mean, basically since it's flipped, it's been red, completely red.
Indiana is a red supermajority, and that's never changing anytime soon. Like, for as much as the Indianapolis Democrats would love to turn the state blue, there are like 2 or 3 cities in the state that will always be blue, and the entire rest of the state will be red. And I don't know.
I do think there are like Democrats that are basically running under a red ticket. Like I would agree with that. The neocon, whatever, like that the hick libs do exist, but they're on Team Red in anywhere that's reasonably anywhere that's reasonably rural.
And on the stuff
Southern.
that's really important, they can't vote against that, or they will lose their status immediately. Like if you are not voting for the right things, then somebody's going to come primary you. It might be somebody that's just as bad, but still, like they have to protect their status. If there's any universal truth in politics, it's make sure you get reelected. Like don't do anything that's going to cost you your reelection.
We still had some Dixiecrats type of those types in the state legislature in Virginia during the W administration, and then that kind of is what pushed them out, and then the more progressive ones came in after that. I don't foresee. I mean, Virginia is like we're ruled by Northern Virginia and DC because like all those assholes are moving out, buying up farms, tearing them down, throwing up subdivisions. It's one of those battleground states that like if you're not in Northern Virginia or in Richmond or the beach, then it's like one of the most conservative states. I will agree with Paul on that, but I have to give a caveat that he didn't give.
Well, he's only one man. He can only write so much.
That's true.
So my opinion, I think that we've got to remember that Paul Fahrenheidt is a student. We can put in air quotes of Francis Parker Yockey. He's definitely in the mold of Spangler. So when he talks about these things, he's I don't know that we need to take him so literal, even though he's speaking literally. He's talking in more of a spiritual sense. And so a lot of times these predictions, I don't really enjoy them all that much because we tend to look at them as black or white. You know, when somebody makes a prediction and it doesn't turn out right, oh, they were wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. But I think that what I would agree with Paul and Jason from the 2-Bit podcast is that there is going to be this reversion to the mean in terms of progressives trying to present themselves as conservatives, whether you call them hick libs or neotrads or whatever it is. And I think that we need to be careful that just because maybe they put the rainbow flag away and, maybe they aren't flaunting the tranny in our face all the time, that it doesn't mean that necessarily they've adopted conservative or necessarily right-wing values. Does this mean that they're going to be voting Democratic or voting Republican? I'm not sure that it really matters. But as I mentioned in the pre-show, part 2 of this is where Paul talks about what happens for the Republican Party. And he says that basically the white man runs west. And he kind of goes with this thesis as to, well, that's where we were meant to be all along. And I noticed at the top of Paul's Substack, he changed it recently. I found it really interesting. Let me see if I can find it here. Forgive me. This is great podcasting.
No, you're fine.
He's what does he say? Something about a Virginian. Here it is. A Virginian practicing in Orange County or something like that. Paul, yeah, a database for the collected works of Mr. Paul Fahrenheidt. Oh, okay. I'm wrong. Orange County, Virginia. It appeared to me that he had moved to California himself, but he's still in Virginia. So disregard everything that I said. My complete thesis was off the mark. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
I don't know if he's actually there, but yeah, like Orange, I'm not going to dox myself. Who cares? I don't live there anymore. That's on the other side of the mountain from where I grew up, like literally.
So I can understand the appeal of moving west. After our trip to Montana last year, my wife and I talked very seriously about once the kids are all out of school, out of the house, and have moved on with life, packing up all of our shit and moving to either Montana or Wyoming or somewhere out there. Like, I can absolutely see the appeal. Over the course of the last year, our our plan has changed, and we're going back. Like, we're going back to the farm. We're going back to Kentucky. We're like, I want to get back to my roots, back with my folks, and she's on board with it too. Like, we're going back to the farm. We're not running off to the west. And I think like the ones who would be the let's go west types would be the people that we're talking about, like the young Southern males that are
the spirit of conquest.
But I think
or
right.
Just the spirit of adventure
And conquest. But I think they're going to see enough opportunity for that conquest right where they are, and maybe not reclaiming, but making their own stake in the South and pushing out the progressivism that they've seen overwhelming their entire lives.
Yeah, I feel that too, man. Like, I had to go back home recently too. You know, we had to do a whole funeral road trip, and just being back in the mountains in that valley, like it was awesome. Like reconnecting with like family members I hadn't seen in years. Like seeing
that sounds
how
like
things
the
were going.
worst Tom Green movie ever. Sorry, I can't help myself.
No, but dude, it was every time I go back.
I've been told I look like Tom Green.
A little bit. But every time I go back, I get like this sadness, because like I'm here in Middle Tennessee. Like I'm the one that ran away from my roots. And but I'm damn sure gonna make sure that the family farm stays in the family. Hell or high water. That came from like my great granddad, and now my mom has it. And shit, my kids are gonna have that farm, and so on.
Hell yeah.
Well, that's why I'm still where I am, even though it has become a suburban sprawl shithole. Blue County, the second most populous county in the state, is because, well, damn it, this is where I was born. I got family members, from my great grandparents to my dad buried 15 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
I'm not just leaving. I might be swarmed with absolute butt fuckery, but I'll be here until I realize that it's the smartest decision I can make is to not be. And right now I'm not smart enough to know that yet.
Jim, after we liberate the rest of the South, we'll come get you.
Okay. Oh, yeah. The flare will be high in the sky.
All right. Well, guys, thank you very much. I think we covered pretty well everything. And who knows, maybe I'll read the second part of this and be like, all right, we got to come back. We got to do it. We got to do it again. We'll see. Anyway, Trey had to duck out. So y'all got anything, closing remarks? And then I'm going to knock this thing in the head. And I'm going to go to bed because I had about a 2-hour power nap today, and that's it.
No, I'm good. I don't have anything to promote. Don't follow me. Don't pay attention to me. I'll show up again in a year when you invite me on again, Justin. Appreciate it.
Don't follow any of these guys.
I just put my Twitter handle up to make sure that you can go check and make sure that you're not following me. Block me, actually, because I don't do shit on Twitter. I'm a voyeur. But I will say this, Joshua Hamm, I totally agree with your comment that the peacemaker can only be accomplished from a position of strength. That was exactly the point I was trying to make.
Well said.
All right. Thanks, guys. This has been great. We'll catch y'all next time.
Thanks, Justin.